important points, Digvijay. Stay with us. You're breaking the story, but we're also being joined now by senior advocate Rahul Mehra on live with us. And Rahul Mehra, throw us a little bit more light on this petition and what are the chances legally of this going through.
Well, I'm not aware of what petition has been filed, so that's something which is exclusively with you, and therefore, I can't comment on what are the grounds that have been urged out there. But what I understand is that obviously there is no precedent so far, and in that very context, things are stacked up against Vinesh and against India. But having said that,
Rahul, this is Digvijay Singhio from here in Paris. For obvious reasons, we've not been able to. We cannot share that document. In fact, I have that document, and I'm quoting from that. And I'll take you through a few points of that, and perhaps you could shed some legal light on it because you've been associated with these cases. I think the fundamental part here is the Vinicius team is saying that the imperative of preserving the athlete's health is an integral part of Lex Sportiva, and that must take precedence over all other considerations. They're also saying that the excess of 100 kg was caused by heat making the human body retain water. There's a scientific angle they are saying. It can also be due to muscle mass increase during competition, and also the fact that the athlete competed 3 times on the same day, and the food consumption that she took to sustain herself, that is imperative because her health and the integrity of the competition is something which cannot be compromised with. That's the crux of the petition.
Yeah, so Digvijay, irrespective of this petition, I was wanting to make a couple of initial comments. I think, number one, according to me, it's absurd. It's absolutely unacceptable. It's whimsical. It's arbitrary to even expect that a fair bout can be disqualified. She, on the very first day, was weighed in. Her weight was 49.9 kgs, which is less than 50 kgs, and which is what the rules of the International Federation are, that you need to be under 50 kgs. And she had back-to-back 3 bouts in one single day. She did not take any substance to enhance her performance. She did not dope. She is not being alleged of any age fraud or any other kind of fraud that is associated with a sporting event. Unless and until it was a fraud, in my eyes, you can't take away a legitimate decision, a legitimate bout, a legitimate and a fair way of defeating your opponent, and you can't set the clock back. If she has won those 3 fair and square, she deserves to at least be acknowledged at that point in time for that particular decision and stage of the competition, and therefore she must be, in my eyes, she's squarely entitled to a silver medal, to say the least. But it really doesn't matter what I think or what India thinks. What matters is what that particular individual who's sitting as a sole arbiter, in CAS, what facts are placed, how the entire international law and sporting law is very limited. It's not, but we'll have to draw. I think we'll have to take strength and draw parallels to right to life, which is sacrosanct, right to a good and decent health of an athlete, danger to an athlete's life in case of extremities, and then draw parallels from there as to whether this is something which is acceptable as a rule, something which ought to have been there, and something which needs to be looked at in that sense seriously. I feel,
Rahul, if I could interrupt and ask a follow-up question, because terms of sporting law are something which are not my forte. You're the expert on that. Now, the Court of Arbitration Sport goes by the defined law, but the petition, there's also one bit in the petition, if I can read out, because this has just come to me, that the Indian camp, Vinesh and her legal team are saying, and I'm quoting from the petition, Rahul, and you can explain this to us, the conditions under which she regained weight after her first fights clearly show that this was not a case of excess weight providing any advantage whatsoever, but merely the implementation of a classic and essential recovery process. And in this case, it was her body, which, because of her body weight from being initially 57 coming down to 50, that even though she barely had anything to eat or drink apart from what was needed, it was her body naturally bouncing back and trying to sort of draw its energy. And that's the reason, despite all they tried, despite working through the night, they could not make the weight. So how does this sort of work legally, and how does this sound legally? And how do you think this the legal team is going to approach this?
Well, frankly, I'm not a part of that legal team in Paris, so I don't know how they're going to approach it. That's for them to decide how they want to approach this. All I can say is that, this is going to be fought on two or three different levels. One is going to be actually the factual one. And factually, they are drawing parallels to how the body reacts, how it's not unfair at all to anybody else, how this was not a case where all legitimate attempts were not made to bring the body back to under 50, but it was body on its own, and it could vary from person to person, and therefore I think scientific aids would be also adopted to show that how this happens, how it's very much from person to person, and how this can actually harm an individual or an athlete in long term or in the short term, and how right to health therefore becomes paramount. So it's going to be fought at the levels of constitutional and jurisprudence, prudential principles. It's going to be fought at the factual level, and it's also going to be, I think, a lot of science and other parallels are going to be drawn. Obviously, on the face of it, the rules are stacked up against Vinesh, and therefore it's an uphill task. But I dare say that one has seen decisions being overturned. One has seen that in case one is able to prove that these rules are completely arbitrary and unconstitutional in a particular manner, at least in the sporting arena, surely decisions can be taken. And I think the bedrock of the entire argument is that you can't take away something from an athlete, even if the rules say so. But if the rules are so absurd that you're telling the athlete that what you did the previous day legitimately will be taken away from you in case you don't meet a particular weight category or a specific weight, level, then it's not a case where future bouts were fought when she was a 50.1 or 50.2 kg. That subsequent bout didn't take place, hasn't happened. There was no cheating, there was no fraud, there was no misrepresentation, there was absolutely nothing. Everything is absolutely a clean slate. How can then you take a legitimate result completely out of the equation, even though your rules say so? In my eyes, it's completely arbitrary, and arbitrary rules need to be thrown in the dustbin. So therefore, I feel it's a 50-50. Yes, it's an uphill task because we are in international court and precedents are going to be hard to find. But I have faith in logic, in principles, in legalities, in fair due process, and in fairness. And I think those are the principles on the basis of which we have to proceed. And, Mr. Harish Salve is a very, very sound legal mind. He's one of the best that we have in our country. And I can only wish him the very best. And I hope they put their heart and mind and soul into it and get Vinesh that well-deserved silver medal.